Well, hey, on the This Guy Has Got to Go podcast, Robb Ryerse and Doug Pagitt remind themselves and one another that the President of the United States is unfit for the job and has to go. And I would like him, as we say every Wednesday when we do our podcast, please, Mr. President, do us all a favor and call a press conference tonight, or make a national statement from the Oval Office that includes the phrase, "Therefore, I will resign the presidency as of noon tomorrow." It's what Richard Nixon did. You said you learned your lessons from Richard Nixon. You said you feel good about how Richard Nixon comported himself as a president of the United States. And that's the guy you want to lean after. Well, the best thing Richard Nixon did that you could learn from is to resign the presidency. So we ask that you resign the presidency as of noon tomorrow. And if not, then the American people are going to join their forces together 174 days from now and are going to take that opportunity from you. Now, I don't know. I guess you could resign after you lose the election.
Yeah, and just not have to bother with the transition period. That's interesting. You know who joined us in calling for the resignation of the President of the United States today?
Who's that?
Howard Stern.
Howard Stern.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not a Howard Stern listener, but I saw that news headline and thought it was kind of interesting. Because he's one of these people that has helped prop up Donald Trump as a celebrity over the years. And
yes.
So I find it very interesting as, that someone who is, assumedly knows him pretty well and over a long period of time, now sees the threat that he is to the country and is calling for his resignation.
Wow.
I don't know if Howard Stern is a listener to This Guy's Got to Go podcast. If he is, welcome, Howard.
I was just going to say,
we'd love to chat with you about some fundraising needs that we have.
I was pushing through some Reddits, and I did see, Howie S 69, and it could be him, which I don't think is the year he was born. I think it's probably the vintage of race car that he likes.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, all right. What do you got for? I'm still trying to find this stupid theme song. Okay. See, if I'd get my crap together ahead of time, I wouldn't have to fuss it.
All right. I want to start today with tweets. Okay. I mean, the president is known as a tweeter. He tweets a lot. Tweets at all hours of the day. Tweets, on all sorts of different topics. And we've criticized his tweets before, and his tweeting is one of the reasons why he's got to go. Particularly yesterday, on maybe it was Monday. It was Monday the 12th.
Okay.
Donald Trump tweeted, went on quite a tweet storm. In fact, I think I saw something that like he tweeted over the aggregate of like a 16-hour period. He tweeted on average once every 7 minutes over a 16-hour period on Monday alone. Seems like a president whose lawyers are currently arguing before the Supreme Court that he is too busy to release his tax returns. If he's too busy to release his tax returns, he's probably too busy to tweet every 7.5 minutes. And particularly the things that he's tweeted about. The first one, and maybe the most offensive tweet, literally says this. This is from 5:54 a.m., so before 6 o'clock in the morning. He says this: "When will they open a cold case on the psycho Joe Scarborough matter in Florida? Did he get away with murder? Some people think so. Why did he leave Congress so quietly and quickly? Isn't it obvious? What's happening now? A total nut job." Before 6 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning, in the middle of a global pandemic, the President of the United States took to a website to accuse a private U.S. citizen of murder.
Of murder.
Of murder.
And is asking somehow to the Twitterverse, somebody should investigate this. You are, as you've reminded us by stopping the investigations into yourself, the chief law enforcement officer in the United States. Why are you not asking your own Justice Department to look into capital murder?
Yeah. And the situation at hand is that Joe Scarborough had an aide in his congressional office who had an artery issue that caused her death. And I mean, it's really a tragic thing. And for the president of the United States to rip open that wound for that family, for Joe Scarborough and, you know, and her friends and loved ones, it is, I am out of my mind upset about this tweet. It is so beneath the level of what you expect from the president of the United States. He is not presidential in the least. He is petty because Joe Scarborough is a political enemy. To accuse him in public. And frankly, like, Donald Trump's tweets are a part of the official presidential record.
Right. And he's even said that they are a forum by which he makes official statements as the president of the United States.
Presidential proclamations.
Yes, yes.
Accusing a private U.S. citizen of murder.
And a murder that was committed while the person was a federally elected official.
Yes.
Right? He's saying that as a congressman, which Joe Scarborough was before he was a person with repetitive discussion disorder on his television show, a congressman from Florida. So he's saying as a congressman, he murdered someone, and that cold case needs to be looked up on Twitter. This guy's got to go.
Before 6 o'clock in the morning.
Before 6 o'clock.
This guy has got to go.
4, 6 o'clock in the morning. I love that. What bothers you is that he's an early riser.
He's not thinking about, like, what kind of omelet do I want this morning? You know, like, what am I going to eat for breakfast? He's thinking about which political enemy can I accuse of murder?
You know, it's for those. It's very, very, simple humor for the preachers among us. There's this passage in the book of Acts where Peter has to explain that it's the Spirit of God that has come upon the group of people, and they're not drunk as they suppose because it's only 9 o'clock in the morning. And apparently that's a crowd that doesn't get drunk till later in the evening. And you being so bothered by the fact that it's before 6 o'clock in the morning. I mean, what how's this top of mind?
I don't know if it were 11 o'clock in the morning, if I would be less offended by the fact that the president of the United States accused a private U.S. citizen of murder. Okay, deep breath. Here's tweet number 2.
Okay.
For this one?
Mm-hmm.
Remember this. Every governor who has sky-high approval on their handling of the coronavirus, and I am happy for them all, could in no way have gotten those numbers or had that success without me.
Without me.
And the federal government's help. From ventilators to testing, we made it happen.
Without me.
Without me.
Couldn't do it without me.
Why is it that the numbers that matter to the president of the United States are not the 80,000 plus deaths that have taken place because of the coronavirus and his gross incompetence in handling a response to it? Why is it the numbers that he cares about are polling numbers, approval ratings?
Yes. And wanting to, again, much as we talked about last week, wanting to jump on the coattails of governors. You're the president, right? Yeah. You get to command all this attention any day you want. The fact that you're bothered that the attention that these governors are getting and that they're being well supported by their constituents is somehow taking from you, and you're going to insert yourself in there like some Forrest Gump scene. That you're going to make sure you're in the midst of it. Unbelievable that he, again, doesn't even understand, and these tweets are in the same zone as one another. Do you understand what the president of the United States does? And why do you tweet as if you are not that person? What is his inability literally to deal with what is? Sometimes he fantasizes about happy talking, and sometimes he diminishes his own capacity as the president.
Yeah. And this is one of those strange things where, he made it harder for the governors in these states to respond to the coronavirus by changing regulations, changing protocols, by, there's news reports that the federal government that Donald Trump ordered these governors to seek out their own supplies, their own ventilators, their own testing, their own PPE, all of that. And then the federal government went and outbid the states in their efforts to do it. There's news reports that Larry Hogan, Republican governor of Maryland, is hiding their supplies so the federal government doesn't find them. And
I heard Hogan talk about that too. They snuck that thing in. They brought it to another airport in Maryland. It came in from like South Korea, and they didn't list the manifest. Like, he's hiding personal protective equipment from Donald Trump because he thinks he will take it so that he can take credit for it. He will literally take it and take credit.
And the governors around the country who are receiving high approval ratings are governors like Governor Hogan, Governor DeWine, Governor Cuomo, Governor Newsom. Bipartisan. This is not a Republican or Democrat thing. There are Republican governors that are handling this fantastically, and there are Democratic governors that are handling this fantastically. And frankly, there are Republican governors that are totally botching the thing. I'm not sure if there's any Democratic governors that are botching it, but for him to take credit for something that he actually made more difficult for these people is infuriating. For him to take credit at all is infuriating. Yes. It's that so petty that someone else might get some credit, that someone else might get, an attaboy, a pat on the back for a job well done, that he's got to elbow his way into that and like, ooh, me too. And in fact,
remember when he pushed the guy at that meeting? I think there was the president of Moldova or something. You remember talking about? He pushed the guy out of the way. That's what he's literally doing to these governors, just like wrestling his way in front. And to your point, look, if you want to take credit while somebody else is getting credit, there's a really great way to do that. Hey, governors, so glad to have partnered with you on the great work you're doing. What does not get you credit is saying, I should be getting the credit. They couldn't have done it without me. That, I feel like I'm going to be repeating myself here. He's so bad at the very thing he wants to do. He wants to get credit, and he's bad at it. So instead of people being like, well, good point, the federal government did support these states, and if people are thinking well of them, then he could, put up some attaboy to them and say, really proud to have worked with you on this, and then you would start to gain credit. Instead, we and everyone else looks at this tweet and says, they couldn't have done it without me. Like, that's just a poorly written tweet. And there's a missing apostrophe in governors. He doesn't use the possessive. So, honestly, right? God, man, could you just, as somebody who's got, a trail of typos across my social media platform, I can tell you, you're the president. Fix it.
Listen, a typo here and there from the president of the United States, we would take.
Would be just fine. One in every tweet?
Sure. As long as those tweets aren't, accusing someone of murder or being so tremendously petty. So, do we want to talk about the press conference?
I've got audio.
Let's do it.
The audio I pulled up, and now I'm wondering if Zencastr is going to get the audio. So this is going to mean more work for our producer, Dan Dietrich. We should call out on this like the other podcasts do. Special thanks go out to our team who's working on this podcast. The team involves Robb Ryerse, Doug Pagitt, and Dan Dietrich. That's it. And frankly, sounds better than all those NPR podcasts where they rattle off 7 or 9 or 12 people. which I'm not totally sure what they do. But anyway, we
What
do
are all
our own
those people
producing.
doing?
We do our own, and now that we're using this Zencaster. All right, well, here's what. Well, hang on. Can I circle back on one thing?
Sure.
When Donald Trump put up that tweet at, as you say, before 6 o'clock in the morning, not only accusing a private citizen and former federal representative of murder,
Former Republican Congressman.
That caused me and others to take a look at the president's public schedule for May 12th, Tuesday, May 12th, the day in question. On his schedule, it involves four things. First thing is the 11 a.m. in-house pool call time. So the first thing on the president's schedule is that at 11 a.m., there'll be the pool call for the reporters, the pool reporters. The first thing on the president's official schedule is that at noon, he would receive his intelligence briefing. At noon. Nothing listed on his public schedule in the morning. The next thing at 2 p.m., Press Secretary McEnany, how does she say her name?
I honestly don't know.
Kayleigh McEnany holds a briefing, full text and analysis. So there's a press briefing at 2 that he's not in, and at 4 o'clock, the president met with Republican members of the Senate. That was his day on Tuesday. An intelligence briefing at noon, a press conference for him to watch. And if you go and look at his tweets that day, you will see all morning long, he's tweeting in response to what's on television. The man is literally not working. Now, by comparison, as somebody who got petty, and I decided to put these in the comments on the Facebook stream if you want this, happened to be able to pull up President Obama's schedule for May 12th, 2009. 9:45 in the morning, intelligence briefing. 10:05, economic daily briefing. 10:45, meet with senior advisors. 11:30, participate in a roundtable of business leaders on healthcare. 2:25, Obama and Vice President Biden deliver remarks on a ceremony honoring police officers and award winners. At 3:30, President Obama and Vice President Biden meet with with the ambassador and with the general. At 4:30, Obama and Vice President meet with the Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates. At 7:45, the President and First Lady attended an evening of poetry, music, and spoken word. Getting their hip on in the evening. So what Trump has on his schedule doesn't start before noon. And what does he have? A briefing and then watches a press conference. What does Obama do? 9:45, 10:05, 10:45, 11:30, 2:25, 3:30, 4:30, 7:45. Now, I'm not saying there's not things happening for the president in between those times, but I do say that the president of the United States, Donald Trump, is not working during those times on anything that they want to announce that he's doing. So here we are in a pandemic on that Tuesday, a day in which the country is reeling in the greatest economic crisis of all of our lifetimes, and 85,000 people have died of this disease. And the president of the United States has nothing on his public schedule that shows that he's engaging with this at all. But what you do see is his public engagement on Twitter all day long with nearly 100 tweets. So he is actually spending his time not conducting the business of the United States. He is spending his time on his own personal pouting match about what he's doing. Wednesday, May 13th, today, his public schedule, 11 a.m. pool call for the reporters. 4 p.m., the president meets with the governors of Colorado and North Dakota. That's it. One public meeting at 4 p.m. Look, this guy is not doing his job. On Monday, Secretary of State at 12:30, 4 p.m., holds a press conference. That's it. Now, I'm not saying there might not be other things he's doing, but why are they not on his public schedule? Why do people not know they're happening? Because you can watch his behavior because he's such a fool from his own phone. He is tweeting the things he's watching on television in real time. Why did he post that thing before 6 a.m.? Because he watches Morning Joe and wanted to write things about Joe Scarborough because he's watching TV. This guy has got to go. Reason number 77, he doesn't work. That's why he doesn't know anything. Like you would think what he'd be putting up on here is briefing with business leaders, briefing with economic advisors, briefing with health officials. You'd think they'd be loading up his schedule, even if they're just phone calls. But they don't say any of it because none of it matters. All he wants to do is run around and tweet. It's insane.
This goes back to how we've talked about how the president does not have savvy political staff around him. Doesn't. He's got family members and people that have been paid off that are riding his coattails. He does not have savvy political staff around him who understand the importance of optics. Like political optics are so important, and it is especially at a time like now when you can't go out and do public rallies, when you can't be. I mean, granted, he has traveled a little bit, but typically, you can't go out and meet with people all over the country. So this is a golden opportunity to pad his schedule with things that make it look like he is working on behalf of the American people. You remember when Bill Clinton was in the midst of his personal crises with the Monica Lewinsky?
Is that what we call it now? His personal crises with Monica Lewinsky? I like that. That's a nice way to say it.
I mean, you know what I mean. His response all the time was, I've got to go back to work for the American people. Yep. I've got to do the job they hired me to do. That was the terminology that he used. And what he did during that time is he made himself indispensable by tackling problems. And Donald Trump watches TV and tweets in the middle of the biggest crisis of our lifetime. Is there not a war room? Is there not is there not?
I put in the comments here, and we should probably put them in the show notes. The link to FactBase, which lists Donald Trump's presidential schedule. You can hardly find a time where there's anything before 11:30 a.m. The only things I've been able to find are when he has a flight that has to go somewhere because he has to fly someplace. They depart the White House. That'll be on there. It is just a rolling set of last Thursday, the 7th, 2 p.m., first meeting, meets with the governors of Texas. 4 p.m., the president and first lady deliver remarks at a prayer service. Two things, a meeting with a governor and him making remarks. That's it. At one point, on one of these, the thing listed on his schedule was, he has lunch with the vice president.
Hey!
Things on his schedule. Lunch with the vice president and a press conference. Again, and these other things are listed here, like when he had the health workers in his office and he was, berating that poor woman for saying that she didn't have enough PPE. And the man stood there with his thumbs twiddling. Did you see that video? You ever see that? The guy, yeah. I mean, that picture of the healthcare provider standing behind Trump twiddling his thumbs like that, if that's not the perfect image of what's going on in that White House, why does he got to go? Because he's a thumb twiddler. The people around him feel like they need to twiddle their thumbs. He's just, we've said it over and over. You have some great D's. He's dithering and delaying and denying, or what
those are yours. I use the C's. I say he's incompetent, he is cruel, and he's corrupt.
He's corrupt, and he's just lazy to get it into the C's, and he's lazy to get it into the D's. It's just shocking to watch someone be this publicly bad at what he does. And his Twitter feed, as you know, because you follow Twitter much closer than I do, is just a disaster on this point. It is just embarrassingly bad. All right, why's he got to go? All that. All right, we'll talk about this press conference.
Let's talk about the press conference.
All right. Did he? All right. So thing I noticed first, and I pulled this audio off of my television when I was up, because when I have to watch television, it's late at night. It's really late, and I have to go back.
Yeah, because we got stuff to do.
Honestly, I got to be talking to nobody on the internet. I don't have time to be watching television. When Phil Rucker asked him what, because Donald Trump has fallen into his crime spree genre, right? He believes there's a bunch of crimes that have been committed that somehow, if he could just get to the bottom of them, if he just knew somebody, if there was a guy to call to get the answer to all of these true crimes that he's so aware of. There's this thing about that the Obama administration has committed crimes and that Obama needs to be prosecuted.
What crime exactly are you accusing President Obama of committing, and do you believe the Justice Department should prosecute him?
Obamagate. It's been going on for a long time. It's been going on from before I even got elected, and it's a disgrace that it happened. And if you look at what's gone on, and if you look at now all of this information that's being released, and from what I understand, that's only the beginning. Some terrible things happened, and it should never be allowed to happen in our country again. And you'll be seeing what's going on over the coming weeks. But I wish you'd write honestly about it, but unfortunately, you choose not to do so. Yeah, John, please.
What is the crime exactly that you're accusing him of?
You know what the crime is. The crime is very obvious to everybody.
Hey, what crime are you talking about that Obama committed, and are you turning this over to the Justice Department? And then Trump says, Obamagate. That's the crime he committed. Everyone knows about it. Everyone knows. I wish you'd write about it. Everyone knows about Obamagate. He says, well, which crimes? Well, really bad ones. I mean, he stands behind an official podium. This is not in a side conversation. This isn't an interview. He brings it up and then says the crime that he committed is the one you all know about. The crime you know. No, I literally have no idea what crime he now says President of the United States Barack Obama committed. And so he's asked point blank, what is it? He goes, well, you know what it is. This is a level of just incompetence and conspiracy that is utterly stunning.
I didn't think presidents of the United States were capable of committing crimes.
That is great. How could he be guilty of a crime when you can't commit a crime if you're the president?
Isn't that the argument
that Donald Trump makes about himself? Of course. It's unbelievable that he stands and says this stuff. It's just bizarre. Like, I don't care if you want to accuse the former president of the United States of committing a crime, or you want to say that he was a corrupt president. I understand that, because I say that about you, Donald Trump. You are a career criminal who should be prosecuted, and I hope will be prosecuted. Feel free to say that. But then when someone says, what's the crime? You don't use a colloquialism like Obamagate or it's obvious or everyone knows what the crime is.
Yeah, because we can name the crimes that you've committed, Donald Trump. We can name them.
Oh my gosh, it's unreal. Again, the inability of this man to do the most basic things. Like, if you're going to stand as the seated president of the United States and accuse the former president of the United States of committing a crime, the least you could do is name the crime.
Yeah.
Obamagate, everyone knows how bad it is. I wish you would write about it. This guy has got to go.
Did President Obama, did he violate the emoluments clause of the Constitution?
Did he bribe? Did he bribe a Ukrainian president?
Did he
commit wire fraud? Did he commit?
Was he in contempt of Congress?
Yes. Was he impeached?
I mean, like, any of these things?
When the Congress was fully in the hands of the Republicans, did Obama get impeached? I can't remember. Well, what were the impeachment charges for Obama? I don't recall what those were. Yeah. Lest someone's confused. No, he was never impeached.
Donald Trump is a small, petty man. And he is not worthy of being president of the United States. He is not up for the task. He is not up for the job. He has never, and we at Vote Common Good have just released our really great campaign called Hindsight 2020, which is just, brilliant.
But it's about Trump voters who voted for him in 2016 and now are looking back and regret their choices and won't be voting for him in 2020 because hindsight is 2020. And
many of them say that they thought he would rise to the occasion. Yeah. They thought that he would somehow set aside the pettiness of the political campaign and embody appropriately the idea of being presidential, that the office would mold him and shape him. And in fact,
childish things, one might say.
He has been so selfish and petty that the office has not molded him in any way. And my fear is that he has reshaped what the presidency is. That's a terrifying thought.
More at fear of being corny than at fear of degrading Tom Petty's honor. I would like to call him Don Petty.
Very good. I like it.
Petty.
So is this the same press conference that he walked out on?
Yeah, same one. You want to jump right to that? You want to jump right to that when he got
stellar day for the president.
When the reporter from CNN kept pressing in on him after he made the comment to the.
So I think it was
to a woman with some Chinese heritage, and he said you should ask China, and she finally these reporters are like, hey, you know what? I'm not putting up with it anymore. You're bullying your stupidity, and she said to him, why are you asking me? Why are you saying that to me? Are you saying that to me because you think that I'm Chinese and you think that Chinese people should ask China about why our testing numbers don't match up per capita to the other countries? Why are you bringing up China to me? And that's when he got flustered and knew that he was like, oh, I did it again. I did the Judge Curiel thing again, where I'm like, well, of course, Judge Curiel is going to rule against me on something having nothing to do with anything to do with him being of Mexican heritage, because I'm building a wall to keep out Mexicans and he has Mexican heritage. So that's why he would rule against me. This stupid, racist, nationalist nonsense of this guy, where Judge Curiel is a federal judge born in Indiana. And Trump says, well, of course he's going to be against me because I'm building a wall to keep out Mexicans.
So here's
and then people voted for the guy who said that because that was in the campaign.
So here's how things played out at this press conference. It was CBS correspondent Zhi Zhang asked the president why he looked at the COVID crisis as competition with other countries, because the mission accomplished banner was hanging behind him, proclaiming that we were leading the world in tests. Why he views it as a competition. While Americans were dying at very high rates, the president responded, "Ask China." And why he says it like that is beyond me. He doesn't say China like a normal person. He says China. So then Zhang attempted to follow up on his answer, but the president moved on to call on CNN correspondent Caitlin Collins. Collins paused to allow her colleague to complete her follow-up question, which was, "Sir, why are you saying that to me specifically?" Basically calling out his racism. The president responded, "I'm saying it to anybody who would ask a nasty question like that." He then sought to move on, at which point it was Caitlin Collins from CNN, her turn to ask a question. But Collins, having made space for Zhang, was then snubbed by the president, who instead called on PBS NewsHour correspondent Yamiche Alcindor. Alcindor paused and motioned for Collins to ask her question.
That was so great.
And he walked off the stage.
He walked off.
Because powerful women worked together to oppose him and to stand up to him, not even to oppose him, but to stand up for him and for each other. And he was such a fragile little baby that he walked out of his own press conference.
This guy, you know why he walked out? Because he had to go. And he's got to go. And he's got to go, too. I think he walked out probably because he's like, I just realized I've been standing here a long time and I really should go. look, about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a reporter kept pressing Trump. Do you remember this? A male reporter. And Trump said, hey, you keep doing that, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave, and then you'll have to deal with all these people. They're going to be so frustrated that they don't have me around to ask questions of anymore, and I'm going to use the peer pressure that you behave in a way I don't like. I'm going to leave and make this bad for you. I think the reason Trump left is he thought, oh, then all the other reporters are going to be really mad at them. And this is how I'm going to, this is a classic way to bully people, right? Whether I'm going to now create a situation that other people aren't going to like you. Like he's some, sophomore in high school trying to work up a lunchroom revolt. And that's the part that's so pathetic about it, right? That he's so fragile. And he got himself into all this nonsense and then says, I'm just going to leave and you people don't get to ask me questions. And you know what? None of those reporters think it's a big deal to ask this president a question anymore. If you're not the reporter from Anon or whatever that right-wing group is, you don't really think it's a big deal that you get to ask Don Petty a bunch of questions any longer, right? It's just outrageous that he thinks the reason these reporters, because he really does believe all these people are making their careers off of me. He thinks they're like the television producers from The Apprentice that are all making their bones off of him. And he's pretty sure that they should be happy. They should be thankful. He has said it to them. You should thank me for allowing you to build your career by covering me. I mean, it's just so freaking insane.
Because the only numbers he cares about are ratings and approval numbers. He doesn't care about the number of Americans who have died on his watch.
Okay, same press conference. Here's the reason the president's got to go. I'm going to try to play this one now out of my phone into my microphone. This is as low grade as you get, right? So recorded on my phone, off of my television, now into this microphone just to see if it'll work. This is the whole bit that he goes into about if saying this same thing he said back in March when he was wearing the baseball cap at CDC and said, anybody who wants a test can get a test. Anybody who wants one can get one. He did this 2 days ago in the one work event that he had for the day. He did it again. So it goes on literally for 30 seconds. It's insane.
We've prevailed on testing.
You're now promising that everyone who needs a test will be able to get one at some point soon. When will that be a true statement exactly?
Well, it's a true statement already. As far as Americans getting a test, they should all be able to get a test right now. They should be able to get a test. If somebody wants to be tested right now, they'll be able to be tested. If people want to get tested, they get tested. We have the greatest capacity in the world. Not even close. If people want to get tested, they get tested.
Doug,
five times in the same press conference where he said, if people want to get tested, they get tested. It's true now. Not true.
I literally know people who have had coronavirus symptoms who have not gotten tests.
Yes.
Who have been refused tests.
Because it's not true.
It's not true.
You can't get a test if you want a test. You can sometimes get a test if you don't want one, and sometimes you can get a test if you need one, and sometimes you can get a test if you want one. But nope, most people can't. In fact, there's not enough. You
know who can get tests? People who work in the West Wing.
You know who did get a test? Miller's wife, who works for the vice president, is his press secretary. She got a test multiple times, and somehow she tested negative, and then somehow tested positive. That's what Trump said. Then somehow, I don't know, like the test must have been like, I don't know, she got tested and didn't have coronavirus, and then got tested and did have it. So I don't know. Can you trust tests? That's what he was saying. Can you trust the tests? Because she had a test and she didn't have it. Then the next day she had a test and it came up positive. I don't know that we can trust these tests. Unbelievable. No, it's because she contracted the virus.
And this is a classic, what's good for the goose isn't good, is not good for the gander, whatever that phrase is. There's the president of the United States has a protocol for him and for his administration that now people around him, everybody around him has to wear a mask. Everybody around him is getting tests daily. Everybody around him is following these protocols. However, because he cares about himself. However, at the same time, he's, suggesting and pressuring governors to open up states and to send people back to work. And there's not masks available for everyone. There's not tests available for everyone.
No, not even
do
close.
have what they need.
Not even,
because he cares about himself. He does not care about us, the Americans.
and he literally doesn't even know. Look, this is the same Mike Pence who look, I'm not making light of the fact that his press secretary, Stephen Miller's wife, and I can't remember her name, has her first name, Mrs. Miller, has the coronavirus. The day before that was the day that they were at the care facility, the older person care facility, and were unloading boxes, and she was talking to reporters, her not wearing a mask, well, the reporters were, and Pence not wearing a mask. And then a day or two later, she tests positive for coronavirus. This is 4 days after Mike Pence said, well, the reason I didn't wear one at the Mayo Clinic is because I get tested all the time and I know I don't have it. Well, you also didn't think you had it at that care facility. And then 2 days later, the person standing next to you who works with you is confirmed to have it. These people are foolish, they are ignorant, and they are obnoxiously cocky about all of this. All right, one more audio bit on this, where they come back at him again. I think this one's Jonathan Lemire, who in that same press conference, after he said those 5 times, you can get a test if you want a test, he then says, it's then this.
You've said twice today that every American who wants a test can get a test.
Yes.
That's not the case. 1.9 million tests per day is far short of every American that wants a test to be able to get it.
Well, I didn't have the admiral, but I will say, just from listening and hearing like you do, we all do, not everybody should get a test because they have to have certain things and they're going to know when they're not feeling right. Those are the people that will be getting the test.
So it's John
Why
Carl.
does he not know? Why does he not know the word symptoms?
So then John...
Why does he say people who have certain things?
I don't know, like...
The word is symptoms. Symptoms.
So then he said...
If maybe you went to a briefing with health professionals, you might know the word symptoms, Mr. President.
You might hear them talking about people being symptomatic. You might even hear that phrase. Look, so here John Carl says, Mr. President, you've now said it repeatedly today, but we have the capacity to perform 1.9 million tests a day in this country. That's our capacity. That's not everybody. No way could everybody get one. Why do you keep saying that? Yeah. John Carl isn't even saying everyone should get one. He's just saying you're saying that everyone who wants one can get one. You heard it 5 times in a row. He said that thing. And then Trump says, well, I mean, I'm going to let the admiral talk about this in a minute, but like everyone shouldn't get one. Only people who have certain things and stuff. Like you, I'm listening to all this other stuff. Again, here he is, to make my point for the 17th time on this podcast. He acts as if he's not the president. I mean, I'm hearing the same things you're hearing. I don't know anything you don't know. I mean, all I know is like people get certain things and then they should get it. And I'm just saying, could I be the cheerleader and everyone's going to be okay? It's unreal to watch this guy and then he keeps putting himself out there, right? Isn't that the most crazy part of this whole thing? Why wouldn't he say, I sound like a fool. I don't want to go out there again. Instead, he goes out, he cancels the coronavirus branded press conferences and then starts new press conferences outside with just him. So he can just talk the entire time. And his ability to say to himself, I think that went pretty well, when I couldn't remember the word symptom, when I was saying things that were just obviously not true over and over and over. But what he will drill down on is this crazy ass conspiracy stuff. This is what's so bizarre about the guy, is he will fixate on conspiracies and on, dog whistle, dog bark stuff that he just nails to a T, his conspiracies, and then can't do the basics of the job. Right? Like the guy is a repeating machine, right? He says the same thing over and over and over. He gets it in his head and it's like a tick. He just says it over and over and over. And then all the stuff that matters, he blabbers on, says things that aren't true and are definably not true, or definitively not true, provably untrue, and then says, no, it's true. It was true then. It's true now. It is someday just going to disappear. It's just going to go away. And we don't even need a vaccine. That was the other one from this week when he said, I am not waiting for a vaccine and I am not waiting for any kind of a cure because we don't need it. Just don't need it. And they're like, well, what are you going to, how is it going to go away? It's just going to go away. I mean, at some point, right? It's got to just go away. So let's just go live there now. He's just a horrible president. I mean, look, he'd be a horrible commentator. He would just be a horrible guy to hang around with and listen to him blabber on about this stuff. I know people are like, oh, he's so charming. No, he's not. I find him not charming at all.
Yeah. Can we talk about a couple of other situations outside of the press conference?
Sure.
This guy has got to go because his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, either had complete ignorance about the way the rule of law and the Constitution work, as it related to when presidential elections are held, or knows the law and what the Constitution says and was subtly trying to undermine it. Like Jared Kushner this week was asked by Time Magazine if there's been any conversation, if there's been any talk about, doing anything in terms of like pushing back the presidential election from 79 days from now. What did you say earlier, Doug?
174 from today.
174 days from today, November 3rd. He was asked if there was, anything was, possibility of that. And his response essentially was, I don't know. I don't know. And then when he was reminded that the president of the United States does not set when election day is, and in fact, it's set by federal law, and it would take an act of Congress to change it. Jared Kushner came back and was like, well, I didn't know if there's any conversations going on. I mean, ultimately, what you can tell is that they have had these conversations. Oh, yeah. They're trying to figure out a way to delay the election, and they got caught red-handed, and he didn't want to say the truth that it's out of our hands. There's nothing we can do because that would settle the issue, and they want to foment this kind of uncertainty, trust, this kind of situation where we're in this, we don't know what's going to happen. They want to foment that because that feeds the fear that their base has.
It's a great question. And it makes me think, is Jared Kushner a moron or malevolent? Right? Is he just ignorant, or is he just somehow wishing to do evil? What is it? Because it over and over with that guy, it is things that he says, and I'm not just picking on. It's not like picking on, Bill Clinton's brother Billy or Bobby or whatever his name was. Where you're kind of picking on the brother, picking on the son-in-law of the president. He's a senior advisor who stands up and speaks on behalf of the White House all the time,
and has been given responsibility for everything
to make determinations.
This is the person who's in charge of economic recovery. This is the person who's in charge of finding. I'm sorry, my dogs are barking at people at my door. This is the person who's in charge of finding PPE equipment. This is he is in charge of everything.
You know what his daily schedule does not include is
a meeting with the president.
Mornings free. It doesn't include mornings free. I mean, you think about the things that Jared Kushner, who I just think is incompetent to do this work. I've followed and watched lots of things. I don't think he's particularly good at what he does. I don't think he would get into the top 5 selection of any executive job offers. Right? He's not a competent person at this job. And he's in charge of all this stuff and says things like this all the time. It's not like, well, it was one slip of the tongue. Well, he had one thing wrong. He is constantly saying things, just 2 weeks ago when he said, that's the federal government's stockpile. That's not for states. That's for the federal government to use. What? So the people who are only citizens of the federal country can access, there is no organizing principle for human beings in the United States other than the states.
Yeah. Listen,
Constant
this guy
nonsense out of this guy.
This guy has got to go because Donald Trump told us that he was only going to hire the best people.
Yes.
You know who he's hired? He's hired the best people in his family.
I saw Lara Trump, who I think is a daughter-in-law. I saw Lara Trump, and she spells it Lara, which I kind of like that spelling of a name, actually. I think it's kind of fun. But Lara Trump doing an interview with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Did you see that?
I did.
Mitch McConnell was going after Obama, saying it's kind of classless. That the former president of the United States would say on a call to his former staff and advisors, who, subnote here, somebody recorded that and leaked it. To say it was classless for him to say that what's happened is that there's total chaos when the philosophy of libertarianism is operationalized in the White House and it's become every person for themselves. When that gets operationalized, it becomes chaos. Well, he really should keep it quiet. He should keep it down. Former presidents should not be attacking sitting presidents. But apparently, sitting presidents accusing former presidents of crimes from a press conference podium is appropriate.
Or sitting presidents accusing former congressmen of murder.
He didn't accuse him of murder. He just said somebody should look into it.
A lot of people are saying.
I'm just saying somebody should look into it. Who looks into crimes? I'm trying to think.
No, I'm sorry. Attorney General Bill Barr is not available to look into the alleged murder that Joe Scarborough committed because he's too busy freeing Donald Trump's political friends.
I mean, this whole Mike Flynn thing, you know why the president has got to go? Because he spent all this time trying to get Flynn out of the punishment for the crime that Mike Flynn confessed to.
Why is the Justice Department dropping the case against someone who confessed to the crime?
I did have my neighbor down the street said to me, this is last year when we were getting ready to go, and Mike Flynn had already confessed. And I said to him, he was up telling me about how Donald Trump's been so hurt and harmed, and people just don't get him. And I said, okay, look, Mike Flynn. This was back when all the Mikes were being prosecuted, right? The lawyer and the national security advisor and the friends and the accountant and all these people. And I said, well, look. We got to Mike Flynn, and my neighbor said, oh, if the FBI came looking at you, you would confess as well. You would confess if the FBI was leaning hard on you. And I said to him what I'll say now about Mike Flynn. If Mike Flynn wants to claim to be a man of honor, if Mike Flynn wants to be a man who's a truth teller, if Mike Flynn says, I am not someone who will lie to take the easy way out, I am a man of honor, then under no circumstances would you confess to something you didn't do in order to not get a worse punishment. The only rationale for saying he had to confess is so that he wouldn't have a greater punishment. So if Mike Flynn's argument is, I lied so that I would have something not bad happen to me, feel free to say that, Mike Flynn. Feel free to say, I was tested. My mettle was tested, and I found the moment at which I would lie for my own benefit. And I would lie to the federal government. I would lie to the public. I would lie to my spouse. I am a liar. You are either the convicted of the crime you confessed to, or you're saying they made me say things that were not true. Now, separate from that is Bill Barr saying he never should have been charged in the first place. So fruit from a rotten tree gives you rotten fruit. Fair enough. But Mike Flynn doesn't get to use that excuse. Mike Flynn is either an enemy of the state, as he confessed, or he's someone who has lied to benefit himself. So which is it? General. And Donald Trump, for you to call that man a great patriot, and the people who were forced into having to say, I don't know what to do, the national security advisor just lied to me as an FBI agent. Those people who are stuck in that position, they're the bad guys, and the enemy of the state or liar is the American hero. That's why this president has got to go.
It's got to go. It's got to.
I mean, it's this, and we're all the way back. I mean, just think about how long ago we were talking about Mike Flynn, and we were talking about Stormy Daniels, and it's unbelievable that is now back. Why does Donald Trump want Mike Flynn back in the news? Again, how bad can you be at your job? You don't want two guys like us rattling on about reminding everybody about Mike Flynn, who you had to fire after you picked him, and then you went to the Russians and said, I got all this stuff with Flynn and Comey worked out. You want everyone to be reminded of that? I mean, what's next? You're going to remind us that you called the president of Ukraine on a perfect call and said, but I need you to do us a favor first, though? Is that what you're going to do?
Read the transcript.
Just read the transcript. I mean, which pop line do you get? Is it going to be what's the phrase he used about getting rid of this virus the other day? It wasn't mission accomplished. It was something with a P. You know what I'm talking about? Trump uses some phrase that apparently it's not. I was going to say it's going to be the catchphrase, but the fact that I can't remember is probably not. But he basically said, you know, we have decimated this virus. The virus is gone. Like, we took care of it. It's time to build some greatness again.
Transition to greatness.
Transition to greatness.
That was a tweet that he sent out the other day.
Yeah, that's the campaign that they're launching. Transition to greatness. Here we go.
Transition to greatness.
Because I did it once. I made this country great once. I'm going to make
it great again.
Very good. I mean, unbelievable. And then they're picking on Joe Biden, right? We don't talk a lot about Joe Biden on this podcast because, you know, this is why Donald Trump has got to go. But then they're saying things about Joe Biden like, well, where's Joe? Joe's in his basement. What's Donald Trump doing? Donald Trump is charging hard and going around the country and trying to save the economy. What's sleepy Joe Biden doing? He's just hanging out in his basement, diddling around, probably working on his workbench. They think that's going to be the end. Like, oh, one guy's blathering on, saying things that aren't true. The other guy is doing what we've all been asked to do, which is to work from home and not get the virus and not have people in your employ get the virus.
Yep, not spread it. Yep.
This guy
has got to go.
Donald Trump's got to go. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. And all the best.